All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Katie Monahan, and I am a communications strategist here at the Ohio Arts Council, and I am pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, a review of Ohio's historic opera houses and theaters, cultural history, economic impact, and case studies from around the state. We are pleased to present today's webinar in partnership with our friends at Heritage Ohio, Ohio's official historic preservation and Main Street organization. We have some fantastic presenters joining us today, and we will introduce them here in just a minute. But before we dive in, there are, of course, just a few housekeeping items that we need to go over. So first, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode, but if you have a question at any point during the webinar, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A box there in your control panel. We'll monitor those throughout the webinar, and we'll leave time to answer those during the dedicated Q&A session at the end. Next, live captioning is available for today's webinar, and you can access those captions by clicking on the closed captioning icon and selecting Show Subtitle. And if you have audio issues or trouble connecting, we recommend refreshing your browser. And if that doesn't work, try logging off and logging back in. And also, please keep in mind that because we are presenting from various locations, there may be some variations in bandwidth and internet stability. So if the sound fluctuates or one of us freezes up for a moment, thank you in advance for bearing with us. I promise we will keep on rolling through any of those little technical glitches. And finally, we are recording today's webinar, and a captioned version of the recording will be available on our webinars page at oac.ohio.gov/webinars and on our YouTube channel by early next week. All right, I think that does it for housekeeping. So next, I'd like to welcome Joyce Barrett of Heritage Ohio to get us started. Thanks so much for being here, Joyce, and for partnering with us on this webinar and compiling this wonderful panel of speakers. I'll go ahead and turn things over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Katie. Thank you all for joining me, and I'm very excited to have these 5 presenters. I'll give you an overview of what we're going to be seeing this afternoon. First, we're going to start with Michael Hurwitz, who has been a champion volunteer with Heritage Ohio for over a decade, working with us on historic theaters. He's going to give us an overview of the historic theaters. Then the next speaker will be myself, and I'm going to give you a very quick armchair tour of historic theaters in Ohio. Of course, we can't show them all, but I've chosen about 25 that all show a variety of geography and a variety of different types of theaters. And I will not be including the 4 that we have as case studies. Next, Lori Overmeyer will be giving us an overview of the project in Ashland for the renovation of their theater. Next, Adam Shriver from McConnelsville will be talking about the Twin City Opera House. Third speaker will be Doug Spencer, who will be talking about St. Mary's Theater rehabilitation. And then we're going to wrap up with Steve Burnett from Wilmington and a case study about the Murphy Theater. So at this point, let's give it away to Michael Hurwitz.
Good afternoon. I am, first of all, very thankful to Katie and to Joyce for coalescing this group and putting together this informational webinar on what has become my passion, and that's historic theaters and opera houses. To begin with, let me tell you how it all started for me. My discovery and my passion for historic opera houses and historic theaters began almost 49 years ago as a student at Ohio State University, when I was allowed to go into the Great Southern Opera House, which today here in Columbus is known as the Southern Theater, one of the great restorations of Victorian architecture and theater in the United States. We went in with a film crew and spent 3 days documenting and capturing some of the historic aspects and elements of the Great Southern Opera House in order to help preserve it. Keep in mind now, 49 years ago, the film kind of languished on the shelf until 2008, when I was asked to be the National Endowment for the Humanities Scholar, and I became involved with the opera houses throughout Ohio. We remastered it, digitized it, and put together a 30-minute documentary on the significance of the architecture, the significance of the economic impact, and the significance of the entertainment value of the Great Southern Theater. From those photographs you just saw to that photograph, that's what you encounter when you walk in today. It's an amazing story, but there's so many amazing stories throughout Ohio, in the small towns and in the moderate-sized cities that have these opera houses and historic theaters. I was asked to come down in Southern Ohio, and that was my first encounter with the Opera House. I saw this, but I realized there could be so much more. At the turn of the last century, almost every small town throughout the United States had what they called an opera house, and very rarely, if ever, an opera was presented in these structures, in these venues. But it elevated and gave dignity to the theater, to the community, and that opera house became their focal point, their community center, where they heard election returns, where they had basketball games actually played in the opera house, where people graduated from high school. So the historic opera houses, again, have been my passion for the last 15 years. And when you walk in, you realize the history of the entertainment in America is reflected in these old structures, both the theaters and the opera houses. Beginning with the Lyceum circuit, which kicked in right after the Civil War, people were treated to high quality entertainment as troops traveled throughout the United States from small town to small town, from village to larger towns. Wherever there was a railroad siding, there was the possibility of having a production. So every little community, even 15 miles apart, enjoyed the opportunity of seeing national entertainment for the first time through the Lyceum circuit. As we went from the mid to late 1800s and into the turn of the 20th century, the Chautauqua circuit began, educational, political, and entertainment. William Jennings Bryan gave his Cross of Gold speech as a presidential candidate in Shawnee, Ohio. You had traveling bands, you had performers. Believe it or not, this is an opera house and you can count the number of people on that stage. Communities rallied around their opera house. It was the focal point of their community, and the Chautauqua circuit helped provide and sustain these small town opera houses until vaudeville came in. And as vaudeville came in, you had an enormous variety of entertainment, a little more sophisticated, a little more diverse. You had music, you had dance, you had acrobats, you had almost anything you can imagine filling these spaces, these small town opera houses and historic theaters. And even in some cases, we have documentation where some of the great entertainers of the early 20th century, such as W.C. Fields, as you see here, performed right here in Ohio in several of our small towns. As I traveled around the state, I found and discovered opera houses in various states of repair and disrepair. In Pemberville, after hundreds of hours of community service, they brought back to life their opera house. In Fort Recovery, currently, they are working to bring back their opera house, the Morvelius Opera House, which is a beautiful example. In Johnstown, Ohio, this is what I encountered when I walked in for the first time. Almost a pristine environment from what would have been 1890. original roll drops, the original organ, the frescoes on the wall. It was just an amazing experience. Rising Sun, Ohio boasts the fact that Lillian Gish, the grande dame of early cinema, performed her first theater experience in Rising Sun in this opera house. And this is how it looks today. But opera houses also mean business today, as do the historic theaters. By putting people in the seats, the economic impact for the community is very substantial. The cultural impact is, again, a very important aspect, and it has once again captured and become the focal point of the communities with a myriad of different activities taking place on a regular basis. 2011, through the good graces of Joyce Barrett and the Heritage Ohio, we decided to try to put quality entertainment into these opera houses. We created Michael Morris, who you see in this photograph, the former executive director of the Midland Theater and the Performing Arts Center at Denison University. We created the new Lyceum Circuit, trying to find and provide entertainment quality for the opera houses and historic theaters throughout Ohio. I created the documentary, as I indicated, on the Southern Theater. It captures and tells the story of the rigors that are required in reclaiming and restoring these great historic buildings. I also wrote the play Theater on the Second Floor, because that's where the theaters were. The town hall on the first floor and theater on the second floor. This book chronicled 16 opera houses in 2009. Today, we're counting about 32 opera houses. It's a hair-raising experience to try to renovate and reclaim these beautiful theaters and opera houses. But believe me, it's worth it. And through the Ohio Opera House Initiative, we are working diligently on the legislative front, on the financial, both conventional and unique ways of financing these projects, to try to bring back as many opera houses and historic theaters as possible. Again, thank you for this opportunity. This is going to be exciting to hear these success stories throughout the United States. Back to you, Joyce.
Okay, I am starting my PowerPoint. Oops, and that is not the beginning. There we go. All right, folks. We are going to take a quick tour around the state. You're going to get a geography lesson at the same time. These theaters, a variety of stories and a variety of geography, all tell different stories. And I'm not going to be covering the 4 case studies that you're going to be having in just a moment from the other presenters. Bainbridge, Ohio, Southern Ohio. The Braxton is built on a town hall model, 519 seats, built in 1910. It was rehabilitated by Tim and Deb Cole. You can catch the Paint Valley Jamboree that is presented every month there, and a lot of times they have dinner to go with the show. Bell Fountain was built in 1931. It's National Register listed. It's an atmospheric theater. It is the only atmospheric Dutch theater that we know about. 1,200 seats. It has working windmills there. It was originally a Schine's movie house. Delaware, I saw Roger Cook on the call. Hi, Roger. The Delaware Theater, built in 1916. It was purchased by Schines in 1936. It operated until 1971. The college, then the community took over. They've done a $5 million rehabilitation, and they show first-run movies, very important to the community. The next one, Fayette Opera House. Again, it's a town hall model. It was built in 1889. It was built for $4,000. It was vacant by 1960. 1978, the Fayette Community Fine Arts Council took over the operation, and they're doing very well. Gallipolis down south, 1895. It was built, it was closed in 1963, reopened in 1990. It is now home to the Ohio Valley Symphony Orchestra. Georgetown, the Gaslight Theater, 1907 vaudeville auditorium. It then was a movie theater until 1962 and refurbished in 2000, plays an important role in the community. Jackson Marquet Cultural Arts Center. You'll notice, sorry about the poor picture, it's a Art Deco style. On the interior, they have these bas relief sculptures of different working people, a railroad worker, a farmer, 578 seats. In 1997, it reopened, and then 2015, they had another theater remodel. Jamestown Opera House, 1889, nationally registered listed, again on the Town Hall Opera House model, Romanesque revival architecture, originally cost $11,600 to build. Lakeside Hoover Auditorium, Spanish revival, a mission style. This is massive with 3,750 seats. It's a very interesting dynamic if you ever get to go to Lakeside. Loudonville, 1910, nationally registered theater, city hall model, classic revival architecture. The Mansfield Renaissance Theater, Julie, you're over there from Mansfield, 1927, nationally registered, listed. It was originally built as the Ohio Theater in a grand Baroque style. At one point, it was sadly turned into an X-rated theater, and the community jumped into action. In 1984, they did a $2.25 million renovation, and then in 2010, they did another $4.5 million renovation. Marietta, 1919, built in the National Register. Hippodrome Theater, then it reopened as the Colony Cinema in 1949. It was closed in 1985, reopened in 2016. I'm sorry, they're using historic tax credits. Beautiful theater. 1925, nationally registered Palace Theater in Marion, Ohio, again, Spanish revival style, has atmospheric theater, 1,440 seats. In 1976 is when it was reborn. 2016, they did a major facelift on the exterior. 1915, Massillon Lions Lincoln Theater. In 1980, it was sold to the Lions Club, who rehabilitated and now run the theater for both second run movies and community acts. Maumee Indoor Theater, 1946, nationally registered, listed, a streamlined modern style. The city purchased it in 2000, renovated and reopened it, leased it to a concessionaire, and so it reopened in 2003, 2004. Because it was so important to the livelihood of the community, the city stepped up, and that's an important distinction. Middletown, the Sorg Opera House, built in 1891. It's a 1,200 seat theater. What's interesting about this, Samuel Hannaford, who designed Music Hall in Cincinnati, designed this theater as well. And then when Music Hall was going through a remodel, they got the old seats at the Sorg Opera House. Mount Vernon, the Woodward Opera House, built in 1851, to our knowledge, the oldest operating theater in Ohio, National Register listed. It did also use historic tax credits when it reopened in 2019. The Nelsonville Stewart's Opera House, 1879, Italianate, nationally registered, listed, 395 seats. They suffered a devastating fire in 1980 and reopened in 1997 and have been doing gangbuster business there. The Newark Midland Theater, I saw Mike Morris is on. Hi there, Mike. 1928, it's in contributing to the National Register District, again, Spanish revival. Originally had 1,800 seats, closed in 1978. 1992, Dave Longenberger spearheaded $8.5 million rehabilitation of that beautiful theater. Oberlin, Ohio, the Apollo Theater, built in 1914. It contributes to National Register District, 300-seat vaudeville converted to a movie house. Oberlin College stepped in to save it. They used historic tax credits to reopen in 2009. There. Pemberville, which Michael just mentioned, 1891 town hall model, original cost $6,000. They have folding seats, 250, and they have a lot of flexibility with that. It was rededicated in 1999. A great story of the community coming together and putting in a lot of sweat equity. Sandusky State Theater, 1928, National Register listed, Spanish Revival style. We've heard that several times. This was destroyed essentially by a tornado in 2020. They are just currently under a $30 million rehabilitation and expect to reopen the theater in 2023. Tiffin, the Ritz Theater, 1928. Guess what? Spanish Revival style movie palace, renovated in 1998. Look at that theater. It's just beautiful. Warren, the Robbins Theater, 1928, Italian Renaissance. It was closed in 1974, just recently reopened. It has 1,500 seats. Woodsfield, the Monroe Theater. It's a streamlined modern style, 650 seats. They're in the process of rehabilitation right now, but a lot of these theaters have had to do rehabilitation while still using the theater. So that is the end of our little quick tour around the state. I want to tell you, they're all over the state. They're important to the community's economy. They're important to the community's personality. And make a point of visiting one of these theaters so you get the opportunity to share in some of that. So next, I am going to hand it over to Lori Overmeyer to tell the story of the Ashland Theater.
There we go. Thank you, Joyce. All right, now I just have to share my screen. That's always the tricky part. All right, now I'm going to do here, but we have got to just go over here. All right. Now let me just move this. I can do it from the beginning. All right. Thank you so much. I'm Lori Overmeyer. I am actually a fundraising consultant with Getler Associates, and I am going to have a different take on this because I'm going to talk to you about the Ashland Schine Theater. Our little subtitle is More Than Movies, and the journey that the theater has had, especially probably in the last 6 or 7 years, but the impact of the pandemic, which actually worked in the favor of the theater. So it's another Schine Theater. It was built in. It opened in March of. Advance my slides here. Okay. There we go. On the photo on the left there is the state of the theater when it opened in 1942. And it's been very interesting. We had a number of people in their 30s and 40s that worked on the project as well on our steering committee. And when I mentioned that Buddy Ebsen was one of the opening acts, they looked at me with a blank stare. So that certainly put me in my place, I think. So that was 1942, and the photo on the right is in 1948, where the fans were snaking around the block. It was certainly the center of entertainment as far as Ashland was concerned. But again, like other theaters of this area, and this is not on the register of historic places. I just want to point that out. It had originally this distinctive facade, seating capacity for 1,500 patrons, and what was really important at that time. It had state-of-the-art heating and air conditioning system, which actually was through ice blocks that were through kind of gullies on the side of the theater. So it was a great place to be in the hot summer. So it was a single-screen cinema. It was a hub for local entertainment, and it was a source of pride, symbolizing the growth and promise of this community. But not unlike other theaters of the era, the changing times proved to be the enemy of Ashland Schine. And this was what I call the beginning of the end. There are many, many people that remember going to the Schines as a child or on a date, but more often than not, they remember that their feet stuck to the floor. So that's really where things were beginning to hold out a bit. But again, the rise of shopping centers, television, and the multiplexes in the mid-20th century, and the 24/7 access to virtually every entertainment of form via the internet meant that many downtown theaters entered into a period of decline and deterioration. Some closed their doors altogether, vacant for years. Ashland Schine Theater was shuttered for good in 2009. And in less than 70 years, excuse the blurriness of this picture, but if you can probably tell the mold that was in that theater, and that white part in the very back is the shredded and moldy screen that was there. It was actually turned into 2 theaters before its decline. It went from a vibrant amenity to a derelict property and a likely candidate for demolition with a gaping hole in its roof, a disintegrating exterior, and a mold-covered interior. And what had happened was that the theater had been sold to an individual who essentially was just storing a lot of junk in there. And as I like to say, it was so bad inside, even the squirrels didn't want to live there. So it was really, really difficult. But in 2015, a nonprofit was formed, the Ashland Schine Theater, Inc. A group of dedicated community volunteers joined together to purchase and restore the theater as a multi-purpose entertainment destination, a home for local, regional, and national independent movies, community programming, and live entertainment. And I want to say that one of the real crux, and I like to show this, that even better days are ahead. This is what some of the facade looks like now. Ashland on the rise. It really had to do with a community that recognized that they needed some key fixtures to have a complete restoration, not only a physical restoration, but really a psychological restoration of downtown life in Ashland. We are really grateful to the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission and the state of Ohio because it really was the state appropriations that we received with the Schines that made it possible to repair and refurbish the exterior, to fill the hole in the roof, and to really help community stakeholders raise additional funds. So one of the things that we looked at as well as, and I think that this is a good spot right here to really talk about where the theater was during the pandemic. So we were called in 2018 to start working on the fundraising campaign for the theater. So the folks that were on the original nonprofit board were really looking to restore it absolutely in painstaking detail as it was originally. Honestly, again, we wanted to restore the historic elements, but we knew that trying to raise, as Joyce had said, certainly there was, I don't know, 30 million for that one theater. We were probably looking at 10, 12 million for a theater that, quite frankly, was not on the historic register, but everything that we could was preserved because there was just a lot of destruction on the interior by the previous owner. So what we began to do was look at what was going to be required to really give it that historic feel, but more than that, to help people understand what a key linchpin it was going to be as far as downtown revitalization. So we were really getting a lot of, doing a lot of legwork, getting a lot of people interested, starting to raise money again. Kind of reinventing the board. We had a great group of volunteers that understood that their number one job at this point was fundraising. And then the pandemic, everything closed. A lot of what we did was try just really to kind of keep everybody's spirits up as far as the Schines was concerned. And then really looking at what we might be able to do in the interim. So like a lot of theaters that were not yet open or had been shuttered during the pandemic, we began to put some great things on the marquee as people would drive by, looking at how we would do some Christmas lights, and again, just trying to keep people interested in the project. But I will tell you that the last time that prior to the pandemic that I was in downtown Ashland, there was still a lot of work that had to be done on Main Street. And when so that would have been March of 2020. And when I returned to work on the project with the Schines folks in May of 2021, I will tell you, I could not believe the change in the downtown. It was completely different. The renovation by a group of community leaders and stakeholders led to, to a great extent by the mayor, Matt Miller, who has done a fabulous job and has been one of the greatest cheerleaders to this project and actually worked on the fundraising with us. It made an incredible difference to the project. So we began in earnest to come back May, June, July, really working on things, completed the case for support, looked at our timeline. And then we had the amazing good fortune, let me go back one more time, the amazing good fortune to have a community philanthropist in July of 2021 that said to us, if you raise $1 million between August the 1st and December 31st of 2021, I will give you $2 million. So we began to, I can't even call it a redoubling of efforts. It's more like we were all shot out of a cannon. So we began having lots of small group folks coming to look at the theater, imagine with us. Again, new members on the board, really talking about fundraising. I will tell you that both the Richland Foundation and the Ashland County Community Foundation were fabulous partners in this as well. They were incredible in what they did. Scott Donnelly, who is the president of the board, and his wife, Rosemary Donnelly, who is the campaign chair. I work with Rosemary on the Associated Charities campaign to raise funds for their emergency food bank. They were the heroes of this story. I was kind of the paper pusher, and the person that put together the packets and the ones that's kind of kept the trains moving on time. But it was because of the passion of the people and the love of the community that really made this go. So what is it going to look like? We like to say it's not about yesterday, it's about tomorrow. So the marquee has been completely replaced with over 1,100 LED bulbs. It's almost 21,000 square feet. From 1,500 seats, it's gone to 532 seats. We have 400 and, let me make sure I've got that number right. 434 seats downstairs and 98 upstairs. It will be 3 screens. Total capacity of 532 seats, operating 24/7. And what we're really looking at doing is, and I'm sure you'll all understand, the need to have different seats now. You know, we're just shaped differently these days than people were in 1942. So we had to have a little bit larger seats, as well as a little bit more comfortable. But we talk about it being more than movies, because we're going to be showing studio and new independent films, creative theme movie series like musicals and film noir, Saturday morning children's matinees featuring classic cartoons, family friendly film festivals, educational collaborations with area high schools, colleges, and universities. And we've already had a lot of discussions with Ashland University, spaces for community meetings of nonprofit and civic organizations, film-focused summer camps for middle and high school students, accredited student internships, venue for student-directed films and animation, displays of local artists in the lobby and reception area, free screenings open to the public underwritten by sponsors, concerts, plays, and community performances by local, regional, and national entertainers, because part of the plan is extending the stage. So we'll be able to have people that are kind of on the road and come in at least once a month to begin with. Rental opportunities for birthday parties, corporate events, and receptions, special film nights for Ashland University students, a one-stop shop for conferences and business meetings, and of course, the popular dinner and a movie promotions with area restaurants. And with the planned programming that we have, it will primarily serve Ashland's 20,000 plus residents, but it's anticipated that with the varied and robust programming, we will attract people from up to a 60-mile radius. So the total budget overall in the end will be probably, it's at 4.3 million right now that's been raised. The actual cost is 4.1, but we want to continue to raise funds for operating reserves. We've not really gone down into the more public campaign. Obviously, we're going to have memberships. We're going to have more opportunities for gifts at lower levels. But the thing that is so important, we think, with this theater, and this is what the marquee looks like. It looks beautiful. That's kind of the facade from the rendering. We worked with some wonderful, wonderful folks that help put things together in terms of just all of our renderings, and it's just incredible, what they've done. but it really is, it's a variety of things that came together for Ashland. It's helping Ashland stay competitive in today's economy. The economic impact is great. The establishment of a central cultural and entertainment hub that will deepen the essential connection to home. But really, again, as I talked about, it's about what happens inside. We want this to be a showcase for human creativity, arts, and culture, something that will build community loyalty, reinforce Ashland's identity and heritage, stimulate downtown revitalization, promote a pride of place, and serve as a foundation for a new creative economy. So we're already having conversations with folks, let's go back one, like the McConnell Arts Center. They produce a program called Songs at the Center. We're already looking at connecting with them. So we're able to have people that will go on the road. They get a lot of songwriters who come in from Nashville and other places that would like somewhere to go in between Columbus and Cleveland while they're in town. So it really has been a whirlwind. I have to say that we hit the $1 million fundraising mark on December the 21st. It was just really an amazing experience. And I know that people are really going to love the Schines when it opens up. And that is my story. And it's just been wonderful to work on the project. And I am a true believer in historic theaters as well. We love the Strand. We love their board there. They're wonderful. My sister used to live in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. We love the county theater, which is fantastic there. And I've read lots of studies that show that across the board, and that includes the younger generation as well, really enjoy historic theaters. And over the multiplex, they will do that. They will go to the historic theater too. And the other thing that I think is really important for those of you, I guess as a kind of an aha tip, is we were very lucky that with Scott Donnelly's knowledge of the film industry, we have a very, very reasonable and rational pro forma for the first 3 years. It's extremely conservative in terms of what we'll be bringing in from ticket sales and refreshments. We're looking at tickets that will be $8 a person, refreshments an average of $5 a person. We think it will be much more, but we are really looking at making certain that as we're seeking an executive director, and as a plug, if anyone knows of someone that might be interested in being the first executive director at the Ashland Theater, please contact me. But one of the things that will be really critical will be building the board. So it becomes more of a fundraising board as opposed to kind of the worker bee board where it's been before, but also really looking at programming that will, of course, be revenue driven, building up a volunteer team, and looking at all those aspects of getting the theater up and running. But I will tell you that the thing that we had to convince people about more than anything was, okay, you've got the money to restore it. Is it sustainable? So we really drilled down on those numbers to make certain that people felt comfortable with the fact that they weren't going to make a big investment and then it was going to close 2 years later. So that was really, really important.
Thank you so much, Lori. Okay, next is Adam Shriver, who's the director at the Twin City Opera House in McConnelsville. Additionally, Adam is a county commissioner in Morgan County, and he knows how important this is at the heart of the community. So you want to share your screen and take it away, Adam.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak with you all. It's amazing listening to everyone today, how we all sort of share similar stories. It's quite interesting. The Twin City Opera House was had begun in, can you all see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The Twin City Opera House began construction in 1890 and was opened in 1892. At that time, Morgan County had about 30,000 residents, and we are located on the Muskingum River, which is was a navigable body of water. Now we're the third smallest county in the state at about 13,000. So we are geographically isolated and very small. So it presents some unique challenges for us compared to some of the other communities. So we are ground floor auditorium. We seat 550 people now. It was about 800 when it was originally opened. Originally, we did, it was a lot of vaudeville shows, minstrel shows. And in the early 1900s, they switched, started showing movies. And in 1936, began showing movies as the permanent means of revenue. So we still show movies today. You can see I'm just sharing some of the acts that we've had on our stage over the years. So a lot of the sort of radio people that were on the radio had come through in the 30s and 40s. Somebody had mentioned earlier about how this, the opera houses were kind of the center of town. This is an illustration of that. This is a bunch of gentlemen listening to the World Series, and the image in the top left is a gentleman who was the manager of the opera house, and he's operating the board. It kept score and showed where base runners were and things like that. So I agree, and this illustrates, I guess, how important opera houses were to their communities. Our theater has been named after the auditorium was dedicated to magician McDonald Birch. And you can see in 2017, when we celebrated our 125th anniversary, we did a special presentation to McDonald Birch at that time. He traveled the globe. He was from Malta, Ohio, just across the river. He performed with his wife, Mabel, and he was set to be the heir apparent to Thurston, who was also a very famous magician, and he performed the Lyceum circuits and Chautauqua circuits as well. Here he is with Thurston. This is the inside of the theater. One of the unique things about our opera house is it has never closed since 1890. So it was privately owned until 1990, when the nonprofit, the Opera House Incorporated, took ownership of the business. So the village of McConnelsville owns the building, and the nonprofit manages the business and owns the contents inside. You can see we still show film. In 2014, in 2013, I'm sorry, we made the switch to digital. We raised $70,000 organically in our community by just, it was really $10 at a time, $20 at a time. We just kind of put the need out to the community, and we were able to fundraise enough to make that transition to digital. And we still show digital films on the weekend, usually second run stuff. So we operate Friday through Monday in the evenings and matinees on Sunday. And then we have live events in between. Here's sort of some exterior shots of the theater. There is a third floor ballroom that has not been restored, and that's sort of the next phase for us. We went through a restoration in 2019, 18 and 19. We invested nearly $900,000 in restoring the opera house. It was mainly things like tuck pointing and foundation work, painting, drywall, a lot of things that people couldn't see but were necessary improvements for the longevity of the building. These are some examples of some of the things that we currently do. We use the theater, as you can see, for local theater groups. We do partner with Ohio Arts Council. We also have been the home to the Ohio Valley Opry. They've been here for 22 years. They perform once a month on the third Saturday of the month, and have had some big acts in here, which is great for us as a nonprofit. We rent the facility to them, and they take the majority of the financial risk. And so that's been a great relationship. We hope that they can continue to keep that going. Somebody had mentioned prior to the beginning of this webinar, ghost hunting, paranormal research. We also have been featured on some cable shows for the paranormal activity that goes on here. We partner again with a group called the United Paranormal Project, so they're able to handle most of what we do in terms of booking. different ghost hunting groups and coming in. And this is the founder of that organization with Jack Osborne, who does a program on the Biography Channel. So that is basically the end of my presentation. But so again, our history is unique, but it is also, I guess, similar to what a lot of other historic opera houses seem to have encountered over the years. And so this has been a great conversation, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of you. I guess my little tidbit piece of advice is, no matter what opportunity comes your way, don't turn it down. Just like with the paranormal things for us, it has provided a great opportunity for our nonprofit to be successful in unique ways. Building a strong board is, of course, very important. I think that is another important piece to being successful in now and into the future. Have a diverse board with very specific skill sets, I think is another very important thing, and that would be some advice that I would lend to everyone. So I appreciate the opportunity, Joyce, to present today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam. I want to remind our participants, as we might run 5 minutes over, please stick around if you can, because we will have question and answers. Like Adam said, they're all different stories, but there are a lot of similarities. Doug Spencer is our next speaker. He's going to be talking about St. Mary's. You can start loading that up, Doug. And he is also an Auglaize County Commissioner, again, showing the power that theater has with our elected officials. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Joyce. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you to Heritage Ohio and the Ohio Arts Council for putting on this wonderful event. Glad to be a participant of it, to talk about one of the topics I'm most passionate about, the Friends of the St. Mary's Theater and Grand Opera House revitalization. Not only a revitalization for the theater and opera house, but for downtown St. Mary's. Our mantra is one cannot do it alone, but many together can be grand. And we have people working together to make this grand from all different aspects of our community. You can see in the picture on the left, that's about 1897. We opened up in 1895, and that's how it looked. And kind of a Auglaize County mantra is great past, greater future. And that's exactly what we believe as we pursue our vision and our dream for bringing the grand, as it's been affectionately referred to as since 1895, back to life. I always have to somehow try to weave in a tie to the 80s. And so I'm going to tie in the 80s hairband Cinderella. You don't know what you got until it's gone. It cuts both ways. And I really think that it's a great thing that actually happened to it as we look backwards, because people lost their theater. They lost that place where they had that first date. They lost that place where they took their children, and they have this deep affinity. So it made sense for the community to rally together to bring this place back to life. The impetus for doing this really occurred February of 2021 as I'm driving my stick shift Chevy pickup truck going from second to third gear, looking at the theater. Our main street is actually called Spring Street. We do have a main street, but it's not our main street. And I'm on Spring Street looking at the theater like I always do, and looking at the marquee, and quite literally proclaimed to myself, dang it, Doug, the doors to the theater cannot be chained shut when St. Mary's celebrates its biggest birthday bash ever, our bicentennial, which is in 2023. And there you can see our president cutting the change, the symbolism of we are going to be open by the time we celebrate our bicentennial. And we have our booklet from the sesquicentennial, and there you see footage from the sesquicentennial of the Goodyear blimp leading our festivities. And we are trying to get that Goodyear blimp back for our bicentennial as well. And hopefully it will move to the next slide. Perfect. Our mission, just like everybody's, is to restore, preserve, and promote the historic St. Mary's Theater Grand Opera House, transforming it into a vibrant performing arts center serving the greater St. Mary's communities for generations. with artistic and educational performances and events. Probably like most, number one goal that you have to do is make certain you're dry from the top. And boy, did we need to make certain that we were dry from the top. As you see in the picture on the right, we have a flat roof. It's a U-shaped flat roof, which covers over our ballroom. And that was in deplorable condition. We actually put money down on a building that we didn't own, working on faith, so that we would be in the queue with this roofing company by the end of 2021, because we knew that it could not last any longer. So that got done. And then over the auditorium in the fly house, we got the shingled roof taken care of the month later. I think that was in November. You can see the picture, the old on the left, the new on the right. Good to have Emily switch gears here. Going to show a video of what the concept. This really establishes our legitimacy. Instead of talking about what we're going to do and making it on making our drawings on a bar napkin, one of the members of the group was able to use his business, use his team to create this video, which you should see on your screen now. And there it goes. Okay, perfect. And this really established the legitimacy factor that I was speaking of, because you're going to have a hard time. I'm inviting you to come celebrate with us for our bicentennial next year. And when you do, you're going to have a hard time differentiating between this concept video, computer-aided video, versus what you're going to see in real. This is the back of the theater, and this is an addition, and it came about because we've got a 40-foot long vertical crack running right smack down the middle of our fly house there. And when you look west to east, you see a nice bump, a bow. And so we had talked to a structural, said it's not going to come crumbling down. One of the members of our group said, can we put a hangar door in there to fix the problem, have an indoor-outdoor venue? That's a teaser. I'm going to come back to that at the end of this video to talk about that more. Here in the vestibule, you're going to see that we're blending this 1895 opera house with 21st century technology. Where the movie posters were, we're going to have vertical televisions that are going to be displaying upcoming attractions, who our donors are, and a little multimedia interaction with why people wanted to be involved with bringing the grand back to life. Here is our lobby, our grand entrance. And the first thing that we did was peel back the ceiling and found that we had another 4 to 5 feet above, and really created this grandeur entranceway into our theater. And we actually see some great opportunity just within the lobby. And when you look back at it, you're gonna see, you know what, this kind of looks like a Pullman train car, or maybe sitting inside of an airplane. And so we're looking at putting a movie screen that's gonna come down from the ceiling, and we're gonna make that a little bit of a movie setting for like Polar Express, or going back to the late 70s, early 80s, watching Airplane and having our flight attendants go to the concession and bringing back the refreshments to those sitting in their airplane or train seats. There you see our popcorn machine, which that's going to come back to life. That's a 1951 popcorn machine. And so we're excited. You can probably hear it popping right now. You can almost smell that popcorn. And I'm very excited for that popcorn machine to be part of this revitalization aspect. You don't see it now, but we did uncover a couple of things in this space here that probably no human alive had seen until we did uncover it, which were 3 old murals, which were in pretty much deplorable condition, but we have the ability to remaster those, and we can do something different with those later on, and a brick arch that was hidden. Now you're coming into the auditorium. Welcome, everybody. The number one question we had when we were finally allowed to go inside with the previous owner, what's the condition of the murals? You see murals stage right, stage left. The first one depicts our canal heritage. The second, the relationship with the Native Americans. There's a third one, which will be up in the ballroom. And purportedly, they came in the 30s and they were hand-carved leather. There's a lot of debate about whether or not they were really hand-carved leather or not. I still believe in Santa Claus, so I'm still going to believe that they're hand-carved leather until I die. And we had the ceiling to address. This is actually Plan B. Because of the deplorable roof condition over the auditorium, we had 40% of the ceiling that was in really rough shape. And Plan A didn't work out, and I'm very glad, because Plan B really, with the ceiling tile there, has come out. We have this done. It looks great. The lighting's perfect. Acoustics make it perfect. So we're very pleased with it. While all the seats were removed for the scaffolding for the ceiling, we had the floors refinished, and they look brand new as well. So the auditorium is almost done, and we're very excited to bring that back to life. It's ground level theater, so we're almost ready to go with opening that back up. All right, we're going to take a walk up the steps and take probably most of you all's first look at the grand ballroom, which this just has so much potential. About 12,000 plus square feet here. And it has been a center, a community center of variety. It was mentioned earlier about basketball. It was mentioned earlier about graduation ceremonies. That was the case. Must have been a much different game of basketball than what we know today. That was the case up until 1923, when the high school across the street from the backside of the theater was constructed. Montgomery Ward's was located here. And we've been told that this is where he went shopping for the large appliances up in this space here. Then eventually it just became their inventory area. In the 90s and the thousands, the Grand had a little bit of a restoration process. And this was opened up for receptions and corporate events and galas for St. Marian's. But it's been closed down for a good decade plus. And so we're really excited about bringing this back to life. To your right, you see a concept of a building which will become the new administration building, and you see it linked by a skywalk, and that is symbolic of connecting the future of St. Mary's with our past. We decided, why do we both need new elevators? So the city bought into the concept. We can utilize their elevator, and when we have events in the ballroom, that there will be access through the new administration building, which the groundbreaking for that is later this year, and we'll access the Sky Bridge. And then finally, you see that true vision of making that indoor-outdoor venue. And again, this is the impetus for this is because of that 40-foot vertical crack. When we talked to the structural, I asked him, can you do it? And is it a good idea? He said, yep, do it all the time. And is it a good idea? You will get this done doing the hangar door concept cheaper than conventional masonry fix. So I'm going to go back to just a few slides on my PowerPoints, and I'll wrap up here. And I want to talk about the vision. I want to talk about the vision of what we're trying to accomplish for sustainability purposes when we get it back open. And as I like to say, we're to provide from ages 2 to 102 a myriad of entertainment and educational options in this multi-entertainment venue. We're not going to do any first-run movies, but we're going to do second-run classic silent movies, all with a twist. We're going to do joint-themed special events. We are going to do next year with our bicentennial celebration a recreation of the world premiere of Back Door to Heaven, which the initial premiere was done in 1939 in our very theater. So we're very excited about that. Music concert of all genres. Glad to announce that to kick off our bicentennial and to kick off opening the theater, the Lima Symphony is going to do their concert Mozart by Candlelight. That's January 22nd, 2023. Comedy, lectures, inspirationalists, all kinds of fun things that we're going to have. The picture to the left is a Civil War picture of St. Marian Private Charles Thomas Cruzy. The reason that I have this, we're working with playwrights right now as we speak of bringing his 113 letters that he wrote during his time in the Civil War back to his parents. reflecting about what he was enduring and thinking about the Civil War, and also what his life was like growing up in St. Mary's, Ohio in the 1850s up until 1862 when he enlisted in the Union Army. And so it's going to be a one-person play with a narrator and some multimedia interaction. We're very excited about that. That's going to be part of our bicentennial, and that's going to be something that annually is performed. And then the two crazy books in the middle and on the right, our secretary of the 501c3, Joe Genner, is a fifth grade teacher, and he and his classes over the last half a dozen plus years have been working on this screenplay called Ditchman. It's focused on St. Mary's, but it's applicable to every reader and every viewer, because the hope is that it becomes a movie. Ditchman 3 comes out here in a couple of months, and that will end the 3-book series. And I told Joe one day in an interview, I said, wouldn't it be neat if we could do this as a stage production for part of our bicentennial celebration? And he is almost done writing the screenplay for that. So we're going to have a lot of community-centered stage productions when we get opened up for our bicentennial celebration. Our community status updates, that's the biggest thing. How do we stay connected with the community? We've had town hall meetings, which are very important. Instead of a thermometer, we use a popcorn bucket, and we use the cute kid factor. This is a CC, almost 2-year-old daughter of one of our group members. And her job is when we reach that next level, she takes the popcorn stickers and she puts them in the appropriate place. And then we've got our checkboard list, watch us take action. And it's fun to put those red check mark stickers on. And here in 2 months, you're going to really see a lot more check marks that are applied on there. In closing, think positively about your theater. The theater we did not inherit from our ancestors, but the theater we borrowed from our grandchildren. Bring the grand back to life. You can learn more about us at grandoperahouselive.com or Facebook search Grand Opera House Live. Thank you, Joyce. Back to you.
Thanks so much. Steve, start queuing yourself up. Steve Burnett with Wilmington's beautiful Murphy Theater, another place you can go to right now while you're waiting for St. Mary's and Ashland to open up. Doug, make sure you stop sharing so that Steve can share his.
Working on it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I want to thank Joyce. I'd like to thank you, the Heritage Ohio, the Ohio Arts Council. This has been a really very educational experience for me. I just came into this job here at the beautiful Murphy Theater in this past September after living in the Kennebunkport, Maine area for about 20 some odd years. But I'm originally from Northwest Ohio, and I recognize the Opera House up in St. Mary's. I first got interested in historical theaters as an actor back in 1982, playing the theater above a bowling alley on the Hungarian side of Toledo, Ohio. It was a place called the Palladium Theater. And doing a little bit of research, it had been a Hungarian vaudeville house on the east side on Front Street, just down a couple blocks from the famous Tony Pacos. And from that point on, like in 1982, I just had this love of the history of some of these old houses, these old performance places. So I'm not going to eat up a lot of time now. I'm going to go directly to a video that I want to also thank my tech director, Joe Spicer, for putting this together with me. We apologize. Some of the pictures are pixelated, but I hope you enjoy our brief history and some of our thoughts on the historic Murphy Theater here in Wilmington, Ohio.
Opening on July 24th, 1918, and built by Charles Webb Murphy, who also happened to be the owner of the Chicago Cubs at the time, the 682-seat Murphy Theater sits prominently in the center of downtown Wilmington, Ohio, at 50 West Main Street, and has proudly served as the premier performing arts center ever since, offering concerts, movies, plays, musicals, and national acts, while staying true to Charlie's core vision, that of serving as a community center hosting numerous performances presented by our schools from all over Clinton County. While the good people of Clinton County, and there have been many through the years, had the good sense to do whatever it took to keep this theater alive and not convert it into a parking lot, medical office, or dance club like so many other cities and towns all over the country. Like many built from this era, the cost of keeping this beautiful venue at times seems overwhelming. Just when this is complete, that needs fixed. And then there's always the inevitable, they don't make that part anymore. But we all understand when these structures are gone, you can't rebuild them like this. It's not financially feasible. So the alternative is what? For us here at the Murphy Theater, we have a handful of projects we divide into 3 categories. 1 is the must fix, 2 should fix, and 3, at some point, we really ought to think about fixing. The goal is to always get the should fix before it makes its way over to the must fix column. On the top of our current must fix list is our marquee. Not the original marquee. The current marquee was installed in 1950. And while it's not technically broken or in any way a safety risk, it is now showing signs of age, and not all its bells and whistles are doing what they once did. And when your sign starts to look a little tired and shabby, it can set a bad precedent for the rest of that patron's visit. You never want your theater to be the town's eyesore. So it's time for us to give it a makeover. But we don't want to just slap some paint on it and kick the can down the road for the next generation of board members or executive director to deal with. We've had 2 sign companies visit recently that have backgrounds in this sort of marquee. They've inspected the sign, and while, as I said, it's not a safety concern now, we want to make sure we never get to that point. While the quotes for the repair are significant, some updates that it will allow us, such as a simple change of the types of bulbs we'll be using, will save on utility costs immediately. And when all the lights are working and the sign looks as good as we know it can, in doing all its tricks, that not only improves the overall appearance of the theater, it improves the overall look of the downtown. And all the other local organizations and businesses that use the Murphy Theater marquee on their own website will be grateful. Our hope is to see work on this begin sometime this summer. One little thing is standing in our way. While the Murphy Theater continues to host a number of concerts, we've also created a resident theater company called the Murphy Stage Company, which debuted this past March with a production of Love Letters that featured the return of Hollywood and television actress and Blue Ash native, Amy Yazbek, who just happens to be the great niece of Charles Webb Murphy. The Murphy Theater also served as the wedding site for Amy and the late John Ritter. And if you ever see the movie Lost in Yonkers, that Bijou Theater and the downtown, well, that's the Murphy Theater in downtown Wilmington. Additionally, we are now the home to a local concert band that was sort of floating from school to school in search of a home and an identity. And now they have both with the Murphy Theater. We're also currently in talks with a couple different dance companies about having a resident dance company here at the Murphy. All of this to simply expand our variety and offer our folks as many options as we can. The plan moving forward for our programming also includes presenting a live monthly radio show, complete with original comedy material, a house band, musical guests, similar in nature to the former Prairie Home Companion. We also plan to host a number of film festivals as we have this season. Offering festivals or events that create the need for patrons to stay overnight is proving to make us very popular with the other local businesses, especially the restaurants and hotels, as well as some of our retail neighbors. And when you make them happy, you get more cooperation, more co-promotional opportunities, and in some cases, more forgiveness. We also plan to create an in-house improv and sketch comedy group and offer a variety of theater classes and increase our children's programming. All these things cause an excitement among the locals who have been eager to get involved. And by offering such a variety, it presents so many options for them. We're also very excited to announce we're building out our own small production studio that will enable us to produce a podcast, create video elements that we can then use for our television commercial campaigns, but most importantly, for our pre-show airing of coming events on our own screen in the theater as folks are being seated. We think this will be a huge plus for us. As we all know, trying to be everything to everybody with never enough help can only cause trouble, especially staff and volunteer burnout. For us, we're looking to add another staff member here shortly, while also revisiting some of the programming choices that were made in the past to see if they served a demographic that possibly has changed now or no longer exists. The last thing we want to do is spin our wheels on something that just hasn't gained traction when our efforts could be better served on programming that appeals to a wider variety of tastes. We also need to be very aware of the potential volunteer burnout with our programming that has more than quadrupled what it has just from 3 years ago. And this was before the pandemic. So efforts are made not to go the same volunteer well too many times if we can help it. But we're not telling you anything you don't already know. There's those certain volunteers you can always count on, and thank God for them. And then there's the others. Well, let's just say it's very important to show our volunteers how grateful we are for giving up their evenings to help us. Other challenges for us, and probably you too, are the ever-evolving social media platform trends and what they can and can't do for us. We just get up to speed on the latest craze, thinking we can rely on the one to really get the word out now, only to learn it's not the thing this month. But all in all, we're in pretty decent shape with most of our social media, for now anyway. Clear communication. Keep your audience in the loop. If you make any errors on this, err on telling them too often. For us, the surveys have been very helpful. When we sent out our letter during our membership campaign, we included a short survey because no one will spend time on a longer survey anymore. We asked the radio stations you listen to, the newspapers, if any, that you read, and the TV shows you watch. These were for our marketing strategy because with only so much money to spend on advertising, why throw your dollars at something no one is watching, listening to, or reading anymore? And by the way, we are blessed to still have a daily newspaper in this town, the Wilmington News Journal. They've been so supportive. And the locals know that they can go to that paper or their online presence just about every day, and they'll find out what's going on at the Murphy Theater. I know not every community has that anymore. That's unfortunate. Now, we also ask your age for a better sense of our overall demographics. And most importantly, we ask what you want to see here on the Murphy Theater stage. This has helped us twofold. Not only does it help us learn about our customers' tastes, but it shows our patrons that their input is very important to us. It's valuable that we're listening. And I feel that in itself is what's helped us nearly double our membership goal this season. We were lucky though. We had over 65% return their completed survey with their membership check. Now, we tossed in a carrot, a $10 gift card to our concessions and bar for any completed survey. That seemed to do the trick. The cost of that gift card will more than pay for itself by keeping us from throwing our money away on advertising that we don't need, and instead rerouting it to the proper marketing channels, because we now know what our audience is tuned into, so to speak. Making sure you have staff who knows what they're doing, isn't afraid to ask or do the research when they don't know, have a decent work ethic, and are doing this because they love doing this. We all know it ain't for the money, and I am so lucky I have the best staff I could imagine right now. But as I say to anyone who will listen, for us, it all begins with kindness. From the moment that phone call is made or the online ticket reservation is attempted, everything that patron or potential patron experiences with us at the Murphy Theater must be as easy as putting on a pair of socks. And we must show them how grateful we are for their decision to spend their hard-earned dollar in our beautiful theater. It really does make it feel more like family. And when that happens, we earn their trust that no matter what we put on that stage, even when sometimes it turns out to be a stinker and we've all been there, they'll stay loyal to us because we were honest and genuine in our efforts, because we were kind.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was a lot of fun. Oh, do you have any final comments you want to make? I shouldn't have broken in so quick.
No, that's, I'm fine. I just want to thank Joe for putting this together for us on fairly short notice, and that's my fault. So
That's great. So to the audience, do you have questions for any of these presenters? I'm sure they'd like to take the opportunity to share their expertise because the historic theater family is a family. So let's see if you have any questions that we can help you with. And if you put it in the question box, the question answer box.
Hey, Joyce, I do have one quick comment.
Sure.
In our presentation, when I was talking about the marquee, I said there's one thing, just one small thing that's that we're in need of. I don't remember how I said it, and I never answered it in the presentation because I just assume everybody knows the one small thing that is needed before we can restore the marquee. It's what all of us are going through, and that's the financing. So. Anyway, in case anyone was wondering, like, why didn't he answer his own question?
I think we guessed that, Steve.
Yeah, I figured.
Well, like in the armchair tour, there are fabulous historic theaters across the state. 2 of these are open, 2 of these are going to be open soon. And it is, oh, here we got a question. Good. Oh, Julie, no questions, but wanted to thank everyone for sharing your experience and covering so many aspects of your journey. Certainly echo that. Wait, maybe we have another question up here. I'd like an idea of taking road trips out to visit some of these theaters. Is there a list somewhere of these buildings? So Don, on the Heritage Ohio website, actually, if you just Google Heritage Ohio Historic Theaters, you'll get a page. It's a little bit older, but it has hyperlinks to all of the theaters we had when we built that page. And you can certainly, find out more because you'll go directly to their site. Another question, all these wonderful venues are called opera. Would you be interested in presenting actual opera? Does anybody want to present opera?
We'll do some operettas. I'm a big fan of Gilbert and Sullivan.
Right, everyone loves that, which Lori wanted to mention that they're scheduled at the Ashland Schine Theaters opening in January of 2023.
Joyce, this is Doug.
Yeah.
One of my hopes was to recreate the first performance in the Grand, which was November 7th, 1895, which is a comedic operetta called Nancy. And I just had a gentleman from New York City who had done some research for me on it. And he says it looks like it was her own personal production, and it does not exist in the Library of Congress. And that looks like there were only 2 copies that were made. And so they've probably perished or they're hidden somewhere that nobody knows. But that was something that I was hoping to be able to do, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Any other questions? You're kind of a shy group. It's okay to ask questions. I know
Joyce,
Mike. Oh, go ahead, Lori.
I was going to say, I know that several people on the presenters today are also elected officials, and I just have to take my hat off to everybody that does that, because again, the Ashland Shines Theater project really, the mayor was the biggest booster, and actually he was able to get the last 2 gifts to make our match for the $2 million. And it just makes all the difference in the world when you have the elected officials who really care about the community, as I'm sure all elected officials do, behind a project. It makes a huge difference. So thanks to everybody that does that.
There you go, Steve. That's their advice. Get a county commissioner on your board if you don't already have one, and have them do your fundraising for your marquee.
Yeah, we have a few former officials heavily involved. I usually find that out after I've said something I wasn't supposed to say. Then someone who's working with us will say, you know who you just said that to? So there you go.
All right, well, Katie, I don't see that we have a lot of questions, but I'm sure any of our speakers, if you want to reach out to them, they're the biggest champions and boosters. So feel free to do that. Katie?
Thanks so much, Joyce, for coordinating today's panel, for bringing everyone on. And again, thank you to Steve, Doug, Adam, Michael, and Lori for taking the time to present and share your stories. It's been a lot of really great information. I just wanted to remind everyone again that if you want to rewatch the broadcast or if you want to share it with a friend or a colleague, it will be available on the OAC's webinars page at oac.ohio.gov/webinars early next week, hopefully by Monday. So that is it for today. Thank you again for everyone for taking the time to tune in, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.